Enhancing color in gel photography is a fundamental step to creating some amazing artwork. There's many different ways to do it inside of Photoshop, and in today's video, I'm going to show you my favorite technique to bring colors to life. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reimagined, and let's dive right into Photoshop and take a look at the image so we can talk about what we're going to achieve in today's video. So as you can see on the screen, this is an image of a glamour model. Her name is Kat Keen, and you can follow all of her work by visiting her Instagram account at the link below. Let me set some parameters of what we've already done to the image, and then we'll talk about what we're going to achieve today. So first and foremost, this image has been pulled up into Adobe Camera Raw and processed, and it has been retouched using frequency separation and dodging and burning to give us this result that you see on the screen. Now, if you're not familiar with those techniques of frequency separation, dodging and burning, or other aspects that are basic to gel photography, then please visit the other videos on this channel where we take a basic guide through gel photography, talking about the aspects of photography, lighting patterns, and how to take the image from Adobe Camera Raw all the way through to final artwork. You can see those videos by looking at the card at the top of the screen right now and get started with that journey. So since we have this set, frequency separation and dodging and burning simply gave me a wonderful foundation to build up some of the color and some of the luminosity values in the image to do what I want to do in this video, which is to enhance the colors and the specular highlights and make them really shine and pop. That's one of the things that I love about gel photography, is that strong metallic chromatic feel to the image. It feels like the image is made of liquid mercury, and I love seeing that. I love seeing how the colors play against those specular highlights to create that very stylized look. There's many different stylized looks that you can do with gel photography. This is the one that I have always loved to do, and in the past couple of years that I've been doing gel photography, I consistently keep trying to explore new ways to achieve that. And this is one of the techniques that gets me pretty close to that look most of the time. So what I'm going to do is make a composite layer of all of the active layers that are in Photoshop right now, because I need to simply have one layer to do some work to that one to build up the specular highlights and the colors to then mask it in to the image that we see right now. So to make that composite layer, I'm going to hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E for everything, or Command, Option, Shift, and E on a Mac. And that will make one active layer at the top of all of the active layers. Active means the little eye icon is turned on. And now we have a layer that reflects everything that we have done from the base layer with frequency separation changes, dodging and burning changes. Now I'm going to take this composite layer into Adobe Camera Raw as a filter. This is essentially me taking this image into like the develop module of Lightroom, because I want to use some of the controls in there to achieve the result that I'm going for. So to go into Adobe Camera Raw as a filter, the hotkeys are Control, Shift, and A, or Command, Shift, and A on a Mac. And that will pull up the raw dialog as a filter. Let me stress, this is not an actual raw file. This is just the layer that we just made in Photoshop. So what do we do to achieve this look? Well, the look is strong color and strong highlights. And then we'll mask that into the base image. So first and foremost, thinking about achieving that, I'm going to take out the shadows and pull them out a little bit. Why? Because I need to see as many highlights in the image as possible, so I have enough material to selectively paint in or mask into the base image wherever I see fit. So I'm pulling the shadow point out just a little bit. I'm going to pull the black point out too just a little bit, so that essentially the pixels are being reevaluated based upon a new black point. So I think that looks pretty good for right now. Now I need to work in adding those specular highlights, adding strong highlights to the image. There's 3 or 4 different ways to do it with Adobe Camera Raw, but the two that are really going to achieve it quickly is either using the white point slider here and increasing the white point in the image, or increasing the highlights in the image. Now, most of the time it's going to be the white point slider that's going to achieve this for you, but sometimes I have found in my journeys that it is the highlight slider that will do it more. And it's just dependent upon the colors that were used for the gels, the power of the lights themselves, the camera, the lens, what they're wearing, and a whole host of other factors. So the point to stress here is that there is not one answer for this. But you have to remember the goal. The goal is to increase the highlights. So explore different options inside of Adobe Camera Raw to achieve that. And then use your peepers, use your imagination, and figure out which one do you like more, and then use that. So I'm going to increase the white point because, again, most of the time that's the one that does it for me. And I'm starting to see good, strong highlights everywhere. I don't want them to go too far and be blown out because essentially I need this to blend in and mix with that base image that we just saw inside of Photoshop. So I think that's pretty good. We're at plus 53, which is pretty close to the shadows, plus 54 of what we did. So that's giving me kind of that strong specular highlight that I'm looking for. I can give it a little touch of the highlights and really try to accentuate it, but I'm looking at her face and I don't want to go too far through here by her mouth because we'll lose some of the details in there. Now I'm going to come down to vibrance and saturation and just do a global adjustment, just a small one, to really make those colors rich. I don't want to go too far here as well because global changes to color and vibrance in gelled photography is going to potentially introduce banding, really rough pixelated pixels in the image where the colors shift. So where we go from magenta into purple into blue, every one of those transitions is going to have really rough pixels in it if you push vibrance and saturation too far. Subtlety is key inside of Photoshop. I say this all the time in the videos and in all the teaching at conferences that I do. Subtlety is key inside of Photoshop. So we've increased the vibrance by plus 12. Let's have the saturation match by plus 12. And then hit enter. And there's really not anything else that we need to do. I mean, we could play with some of the other sliders just to get a cool stylized look. And you know what? Let's take a quick little time out here. This is a cool look all in itself, by itself the way it is. So part of how you grow as an artist inside of Photoshop is just simply try new things. Try it in the comfort of your own home and your own office with your own computer where nobody's watching. Turn all the lights off and close it in and try new things. Because when you do, remember what you did and how you got there. But when you start working with those new elements, that's how you consistently keep evolving your style to create amazing new artwork as you go on your journey of an artist. So in this case, I actually do like the way this looks. And I kind of just want to say, screw this video and leave it the way it is. But I'm not going to because I remember how I got there and I'm okay. So let's go ahead and finish the process for you all. And then I'm going to experiment on my own when you aren't watching me and do other cool things. So I'm going to hit OK. And that will now process that image. God, that's so cool. It's going to process that image using Adobe Camera Raw as the filter. And now we have our new top layer here that has that effect. So what I want to do is to selectively bring this chromatic, metallic, beautiful feel into the base image, the base layer. So to do that, there's a couple of different things we have to work on. First and foremost, I'm going to use a blend if. Blend if simply does this. It tells Photoshop whatever this layer is, you can decide to blend it down to the base layer, either based upon the highlights or the shadows. Or you can say the base layer, I want it to blend up and through to the top layer, this layer, by highlights and shadows. Let's go into the blend if dialog and it'll become a little bit more clear. So to get into the blend if dialog, double click anywhere on your layer where there's not a word or a thumbnail, anywhere in this gray space. And when you do, it'll pull up the layer style dialog. This is the blend if dialog. Right now it's set to blend if gray, which means it's simply just going to be dealing with luminosity values of shadows, midtones, and highlights, or black, gray, and white. But you can shift it to be in the RGB channels of red, green, and blue. And that does work if you're dealing with any kind of image, whether it's gel photography or something else. If you wanted to blend a sky, for instance, you could switch blend if to blue, because the sky is predominantly blue, and you can use blue as the main access point for the layers to blend with each other. But for today's purposes, we're going to leave it on gray. And I didn't mean to hit enter, my bad, so let's go back into it. So now this layer, which is the one that we just put through Adobe Camera Raw, and it has all the specular highlights, we can say we want this layer's shadows to blend down and through to the base layer. Or we want this layer's highlights to blend down through the base layer. Subsequently, we can say we want the original shadows of the underlying layer to come up and through this layer to be seen, or the original highlights to come through. We don't want to mess with either one of the highlights because remember, the highlights were one of the key factors that we just edited in Adobe Camera Raw. We want them to be the same. I don't want to see the original highlights of the base layer, and I certainly don't want the new highlights that I just painstakingly created to disappear. Do I want the shadows of this layer to go away? Well, we removed the shadows. Remember, we took the shadows out. We took the black point out. So I want the original shadows to come through, because the shadows are not the key to pull the metallic color into the scene, to the specular highlights into the scene. It's the highlights that I want the audience to see, the colors to see. So I can let the shadows come through. The underlying layer shadows come up and through to this layer. So when you grab the triangle and you move it to the right, it's going to start letting the original shadows come through. Now, if you see it on the screen, it's a very ugly effect right now because it's not being feathered. The triangle has to be split to tell Photoshop to feather the effect. To split the triangle, you hold Alt or Option and click the right side of the triangle, and it will split the triangle immediately and start feathering the overall effect. Now, on the screen, if we look, let's take it back and just watch the screen, watch the picture of her. Those shadows, the original ones, are coming through. And so what's happening is it's allowing strong highlights, so to speak. It's allowing the highlights to look super strong because we have original shadows being played into the scene. So the highlights on top call focus and create three-dimensionality at the same time. When you're doing dodging and burning, this is the same thing. You paint a shadow into the cheek, and then you paint a corresponding highlight up here, and those two create a sense of 3 dimensions. When you put on makeup, if you put on makeup, it's the same thing. You contour a cheek, and then you have a stronger highlight up top. The highlight and shadow, hand in hand, create 3-dimensionality. So in this case, we're doing the same thing, simply by letting the highlights that we just worked on in Adobe Camera Raw be present in this layer, and the original shadows coming through. Now, again, let me stress, this on its own looks really cool just the way it is. And you can continue to refine this artistically to take it to its final artwork. But I want to do one more thing. Actually, 2 more things. I'm going to mask this effect in because I want to see just a little bit more of that original image. If there's something about the original image that I like, and spoilers, I don't, I like the way this looks, but I want to show you how to use a mask if you don't already know how to use a mask. So I'm going to make a black mask or a hide all mask onto this top layer here so that it will hide the entire effect, and then I can selectively paint it in where I want it to be. To do that, I'm going to come to the layer mask icon here, and I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click it, which will make my black mask. Now that entire layer is being hidden, and wherever I paint white onto this mask is where it will be revealed. I'm going to be painting with the basic brush by hitting B for brush, the opacity set to 100%, and flow is set to 10%, so that I can build it up, because subtlety is key inside of Photoshop. Talk about that all the time in education and in these videos. Subtlety is key inside of Photoshop. So painting white onto the mask, I can just go where the existing highlights are. I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet that has pressure sensitivity in the pen and the tablet. So the lighter I touch the pen to the tablet, the more that it will just gently interact the tool with the document. And that's kind of key because I need to be able to control it and to build it up. So again, just punching in some of those highlights just a little bit by using that mask. We'll come down here to her hips and down her leg and right onto her tush. And then we can see those highlights come into play. There we go. Now with the blend if lets so much of the original shadows come through that ultimately it kind of achieved that goal, but it did it globally. By using the mask, we can simply paint in those highlights where we want them to be. And anywhere where we spilled over into a shadow, that's okay, because again, on this layer, we did a blend if saying the base layer's shadows, which are down here. So essentially this layer with the effects of frequency separation, dodge, and burn on top of it, that set of shadows is original coming up and through. So that with this layer mask active, we're just painting in the existing highlights. And again, anywhere where we went past a highlight into the shadows, we're safe because we just did the blend if. The last thing that I want to do is to change the properties of this layer and let some of the specularness, the brightness of it go away, and let the colors be a little more saturated, because bright colors also give the illusion of highlight. So right now, this layer's blending mode is set to normal. Let's change it. And the ones that I typically explore are either overlay or hard light. Let's go to hard light. And as you can see instantaneously, let's do it again without that little helper, mouse helper on the screen. So this is the normal way. Let's zoom into her face so that we can see it. And hopefully in the video, we'll be able to see the good before and after. So this is the normal blending mode. And now we're going to go to hard light. The colors, it's a subtle shift, but the colors become stronger. they become a little bit brighter. You know what? For the purposes of the video, so you can see this, I'm going to take it back to normal, and I'm going to turn off that layer mask so that essentially you can see the base layer without any mask on it. So now if I take it from normal to hard light, see how much of a difference, how much stronger the color becomes. The color is becoming more prevalent than just the white luminosity of the specular highlights. And again, if the color is really bright and strong, it gives the illusion to the audience that there are strong specular highlights. We don't necessarily need the white data, we just need bright color. So in this case, by changing the blending mode to hard light, we get that option in the scene itself. So I'm going to hit Control and 0 or Command and 0 to zoom all the way back out so we can talk through and do a recap of what we've done with this image from gelled photography and gelled glamour. So simply what we have done as the recap is that we took the image after it had been the base image, we processed it with frequency separation and dodging and burning. I did that before the video. And then I made a composite layer of all of that, took that into Adobe Camera Raw as a filter, and simply took out the shadows and the black point so that all of the highlights would be the strong key element that we would visually see. And then we accentuated all of those highlights by pushing the white slider up, the highlights up a little bit, and then vibrance and saturation to really give the colors a strong presence in the scene. Then we took that back into Photoshop and simply used a layer mask to paint in where we wanted it to be. We did a blend if so that the original shadows at the base would come up and through the new layer we had just made, so that the highlights would be the strongest part of it and not just the shadows as well. So it's just the highlights that we're looking at. And then we used a layer blending mode of hard light so that the luminosity white point within the image would be less than the brighter colors, so that the brighter colors would draw the audience's focus. This is one stylized choice that you can make with your work. And again, as I said, there are many different ways of editing gelled photography and different artistic looks. This is the one that calls to what I find so interesting and so attracting to gelled photography, is because that rich chromatic metallic nature to the colors, like liquid mercury, it's just so cool to me. And that's what I strive to create in my artwork. And I do stress that experimentation is key. This is how I arrived to some of these styles. It wasn't because it was taught to me by anybody else. I just kept problem solving until I got to this place in Photoshop, then refined the technique, and now I'm sharing it with all of you. So thank you for watching this video today. If you like the content in the video, please give it a like. That's what we have to do on YouTube so that the algorithm will understand that the videos on this channel have great content, hopefully for other viewers as well. And if you want to stay on top of all the new information that I'm pushing out to this channel, where I'm going to be doing tutorials for gel photography, for other types of work that I do in my career as a photographer, as well as shop vlogs, which are vlogs where essentially it's me in Photoshop processing work that I have to do. It's not really a tutorial, it's just me working, and you get to be a part of that process and see some of the highlights of that work, as well as other wonderful different things that I have planned for this channel. Then subscribe to the channel so you can stay atop of all that information. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop.